bring up
Can I add another point on something? You know, like in history, with history, then, you know, like, you know, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party.
Yeah.
So to scapegoat, say the Jews is, you know, it's all their fault. You know, they're the problem, which he did. It, you know, they're stereotyping them as, you know, being lower than vermin and rats and things. You know, and talking about them in Mein Kampf and things as, you know, like they're like rats. He saw them as that. So killing a Jew is like killing a rat, is what he put in Mein Kampf. But I mean, where you think how this could ever be, you know, dealing with these stereotypes, it's so dangerous if it's not ever thought about. You know, it can go down a pretty evil road.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, I think had the people back then been more conscientious about stereotypical thinking, things might not have come to what they came to. Same with like in communist countries and other tyrannical situations around the world, things might not have come to what they came to had people been more mindful about their own, what I refer to as human condition. So whether it's down to stereotypical thinking, whether it's down to discuss tolerance issues, that's a big deal. I've heard Dr. Jordan Peterson allude to that with regards to Adolf Hitler, saying that he thinks he had discussed tolerance issues amongst other things. And that's how things, you know, went down such a tragic, god-awful path. But that's possibly another topic that we could delve into another time.
It leads to a question that's like, why is it the easy solution? You know, I'll just go with the herd, go with the masses of the people, go with them. Yeah, it's easier to do that behavioral response rather than let's critically or analytically think. Why are we treating them? Why is it easier? Why are people sorry?
If you go against the crowd, you have to accept to be ostracized, for people to stand out against a big group of people. People will laugh at you.
Yep.
And you have to accept that.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about Germany in particular, the Germans back then were so advanced in many, many ways. They were very, very civilized people.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they found themselves broke. They were tired, you know, after World War One. There was a lot of things, a lot of matters contributing to their decision making. A lot of people look back and they demonize and they say, I could never have done what they did. But had you been in those people's shoes at that time, you would have done exactly the same. This has been long thought out and assessed and examined and prodded and poked at by many a psychologist, psychiatrist, and all the rest of it, historians and all the rest of it, right? A lot of big brains have looked at this. A lot of deep thinkers and critical thinkers have looked at this.
Yeah.
And we all have it in us to go that bad. So
just one thing on what you're saying there. So I just know with history in mind, like a big thing was in the early days of Hitler rising to power was that he would tell everyone that they weren't defeated on the battlefield. You know, they only got to the western part of the Ruhr, the Ruhr Valley and things. They didn't get to Berlin or Munich. And so he was telling the people, no, we weren't defeated. We were stabbed in the back by Jews at home. And that's what Hitler would tell the people. We weren't defeated. We were stabbed in the back. It was a conspiracy at home. And that's why we pulled out and ultimately lost the war. So it kind of like, if you think about that kind of thinking that he's thinking, okay, so geographically, okay, the Allies didn't take all of Western Germany up to even to central Germany. So then there's a small reason he's clinging to that. And people believed it because obviously in their psyche, they don't want to admit a defeat. It makes them look weak. It makes them look, you know, stupid and bad. If they,
they were bombarded with propaganda as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's interesting how then the ego, in a way, is boosted hearing Hitler say no, we weren't beaten and this and they did, and so it's but then and then the acceptance of it, then okay, there's the problem. It's that group of people there, then the stereotypes kick in. It's strange how it all links up, but people would choose to accept that rather than question it. It is I do find that strange.
It's laziness, actually. In a certain way, it's a mental laziness. But if you want to stand against what the majority of people believe, you have to have a lot of strength, inner strength. Otherwise, you couldn't do it, because people will try to make you feel small and laugh at you and belittle you and even humiliate you.
But then that poses a question just in World War One. In this example, the French leader at the time, Georges Clemenceau, he told Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister, and Woodrow Wilson, American President, he said to them, no, the Germans will never admit they've been defeated. We have to go to Berlin. He actually said that to them before the war had ended. So I sometimes think to myself, okay, a lot more people may have died, a lot more suffering would have come. But you think if they had actually done that and got, then people like Hitler would have had no grounds to make their claims on, because the defeat would have been so obvious, And I sometimes wonder if that French leader was correct. Okay.
Well, you're saying there would have been a lot more killing. I'm just glad they didn't. They didn't do it, and there was no more killing.
I'm just saying, as in, there would have been more killing, but not. I don't think there would have been 60 million deaths that 20 years later the Second World War produced. There would have probably been another, probably 3 to 5, but you would have averted a possible 60. That's because you're not going to give people like Hitler their claim that it was a betrayal at home and we weren't defeated on the battlefield. So, through a little bit of hardship, you avert an even bigger hardship. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But I don't know.
Okay. We're gonna just be mindful of the time. It is 20 to 10, so I want to get us through this article here on PubMed Central. So this article says, let me have a look. It is dated January the 5th, 2023. It's an editorial, and it's the psychological process of stereotyping. Content, forming, internalizing, mechanisms, effects, and interventions. So I'm interested in the mechanisms, but let's read through it all, see what we can find from this. I do feel, I don't know, that Britannica one, I feel as though it seemed a little bit woke, if you know what I mean. But anyway, let's go into this one. Stereotype is a pervasive and persistent human tendency that stems from a basic cognitive need to categorize, simplify, and process the complex world. This tendency is a precondition for social bias, prejudice, and discrimination. Amid the COVID-19 outbreak, the discrimination, exclusion, and even hostility caused by stereotypes have increasingly become an important social issue that concerns political and social stability. Therefore, the current issue focuses on a broad spectrum of research addressing 4 main themes. One, the psychological process involved in forming and internalizing social stereotypes. 2, the negative consequences of stereotypes. 3, the neurocognitive mechanisms underlying stereotypes. And 4, the interventions addressing the consequences of negative stereotypes in this area with changes and challenges. Specifically, the research topic consists of 13 papers by 54 scholars that target stereotypes among different social groups, including males and females, older people and young generation, minority races, people living with HIV or AIDS, in brackets PLWHA. I don't know what that means. Oh, right, yeah, I do now. People with mental health problems, juvenile transgressors, refugees, and Asian Americans during COVID-19 outbreak. These studies are conducted in culturally diverse countries, including Brazil, China, Germany, Hungary, and the USA, contributing to a more holistic picture of contemporary stereotypes. Now, before we go any further, I would never have thought of China being culturally diverse when considering the vast majority of China is occupied by indigenous Chinese people. I just never, and they can be quite a racist group of people, or is that stereotypical of me to think? I don't know. I just never thought that
If
it was
you've been to China, have you been to
No,
China,
I've not.
Lieutenant? Okay.
No, I've
When
not.
you go to China, you find they are all Chinese, but they are separate groups. They do separate or think of themselves as different groups in different areas of China that they live, and they actually look down at each other, which I find quite surprising, really. I mean, some areas of China is looked upon as very uneducated and how do you put it? Country people, country bumpkins,
Right, okay.
and other
That's
people are
another
being
stereotype that I put ravioli
yes,
into.
yes, yes, yeah.
So,
That's
right,
right.
because I automatically assume that under communism, you can't have
Yeah,
other cultures, because under communism tends to eradicate differences, or it tries to,
yeah,
because it
but
wants everyone to be the same, so everyone
yeah,
can be equal in, it's all about equality, but it works out
yeah.
very much inequality.
I tell you, I spent 3 weeks in China, in a kind of a poor area of China, and I stayed with a family where they had a school. They were teaching English, so I was helping teach the teachers to speak English. Now, I'm not English myself, but anyway, for them, I was a native speaker. Um, and I found, and I couldn't actually understand it, I still don't understand it. There was a lady there who was one of the teachers, and I found her to be really rather quite good, but she was discriminated against by other Chinese people there. And I'm assuming because she belonged to a different social group or different, I can't say ethnic, what can I call it? A different group, or they have many different languages actually, which we don't get to know here outside China. They have different dialects in China. Perhaps she belonged to a different dialect group. I don't know, but she was obviously discriminated against, and she eventually left. She didn't stay in the school. So, and it's a puzzle to me still today. I mean, this part of China I was in, they never see any foreigners, because every time they saw me, they would ask the people with me, "Oh, is she Russian?" Because that's the only foreigners they have ever met.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to this. So number one, the forming of social stereotypes. Negative stereotypes from the public may be influenced by our knowledge about and psychological distance to the target group, beliefs of group malleability, beliefs in the implicit change of traits, and moral values. For instance, Caldas et al. So that sounds like, this is like a study that I could click on to another week, tested whether people's knowledge and proximity to the circumstances associated with juvenile transgression would influence their opinions about the proposal for reducing the age of criminal majority in Brazil. They investigated the passers-by in a public square and workers from the juvenile justice courts and found that people were more likely to hold negative stereotypes of juvenile delinquents if they were far from them. Pascuj and Oroz, looks like another study, focused on the refugees as the most typically vulnerable group in turbulent international times, and they found that group malleability beliefs were negatively linked to dehumanization tendencies and threats perceived from migrants in Hungary. Prodsko and Skula, another study, examined a more general negative stereotype of youth, also known as the kids these days effect, KTD effect. In 2 studies with American adults, belief in whether a trait changes over the lifespan was associated with such prejudices. In addition, Lai et al., another study, focused on 3 cues linked to women's perceived high long-term mating value and reported that Chinese women displaying sexually attractive cues were perceived to have lower moral values. Moreover, they were stereotyped as having lower levels of humanness than women displaying beautiful facial cues or virtuous behavioral cues, which in turn led to lower mating opportunity. So I know how I'll put that simply, but I won't go there.
Lieutenant, there's so much packed in this article. Really, it's so much detail. One needs to really sit and read it. At least I need to sit and read it properly.
Well, the thing is, I'm going to get through this article because it's 10 to 10. We will come back to this because I can't see us coming to a conclusion today. So we will come back to this article, but the links to everything that we're looking at today will be put into the description of this live stream at the end of the live stream. So don't worry about that. You can go back and get those links and go and look at the article yourself. The same for the audience as well. It will be there after I've ended the stream. Okay, so we'll get back to this. Culture also plays an essential role in stereotype formation. Lee et al. Targeted stereotypes toward high-power individuals and revealed that people influenced in Confucianism, right, held positive stereotypes of competence and warmth for the senior high-power individuals. This finding is inconsistent with the traditional proposition that high-power individuals tend to be stereotyped as having high competence and low warmth. This might be because high-power individuals under Confucian culture are expected to have great social responsibility and concern for the well-being of others. Furthermore, new stereotypes emerged as a result of COVID-19 in the global context. COVID-19 is a threat to physical health and mental health, and various reports have indicated that COVID-19 is closely related to stigma and discrimination. 2 studies examined the stereotypes related to COVID-19. Zhao et al. Found that the prevalence of COVID-19 related negative stereotypes was low in China. Besides, the more people know about COVID-19, the fewer negative stereotypes associated with COVID-19 they reported. Daly et al., on the other hand, reported that Asian Americans were facing increasing challenges from different ethnic groups on social issues related to COVID-19 in the United States, and the increasing tendency to blame China for the pandemic was associated with stereotyping Asian people as more foreign.
Can I add one thing on that, Lieutenant? Sorry, just about COVID and those. Well, it didn't help, did it? You had, was it President Trump was calling it the China virus in every speech he gave at the time.
Well, I don't think that
that probably didn't help. He had the China virus. He kept, I mean, we'll call it COVID.
that's because he was reminding everyone the origin of this virus, right?
Right. Okay.
He wasn't demonizing the Chinese people, okay, and he didn't put it out there as if it was a look at the Chinese people, look at what they're doing, right? He was just talking about the fact that it came out of a lab in China, right?
But I mean,
what the rest of the mainstream media then did with that was put it into everyone's minds that he was talking about the Chinese people, and thus or at least added to any stereotypes that anyone was developing anyway.
Yeah. All right then. Yeah. Okay.
So it wasn't Trump that did that. It was the mainstream media that did that.
But if I put this thought just out there quickly, you know, if he had a choice, okay, I could call it COVID-19, option A, just COVID, option B, or the China virus, option C. You know, he could have. I mean, I don't know.
At the time, right, the vast majority were saying we don't know where it's come from because the mainstream media were trying to bury the fact that it came out of a lab in China. Trump wasn't letting them get away with doing that. So he was saying it's the China virus, right?
Okay.
It came out of China, right? So that's what he was doing there. At the time, the mainstream media were trying to bury the fact that it came from China. And then as soon as he was calling it the China virus to make sure no one forgot and therefore that it continued to get investigated, right, to get to the root of it. Otherwise, it would have just been buried. It wouldn't have been investigated. The evidence would have been destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he made sure that it would be investigated. And what the mainstream media then did was planted the seeds into people's mind, saying, look, he's now demonizing the Chinese people. So that adds to the information going into the brain that
I think you're making a very important point here, Lieutenant, that journalism actually works with stereotypes. It's easier to write an article and include the stereotypes than actually try to explain things on the individual basis, really. You have big groups it's easier to write about.
Yeah, they didn't report the facts of what Trump had said and what was going on at the time. They just wanted to hurt Trump and bring down whatever he was trying to do, which was get to the heart of the matter. They wanted to bury the origins of this virus. They wanted Trump out. And in the process, they have possibly been instrumental in what we've just read about the stereotypes that were developed against Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very good point that you've raised there, Ravioli.
Smooth moderator.